The motion of your hands. That's
What can we learn from nonverbal communication? Can how we conduct ourselves physically impact job interviews, our personal or professional life? Learn from the author of Let Me See Your Body Talk, how to detect and understand body language. Next on Living Smart. Hello, I'm Patricia GRAS. Welcome to Living Smart, the show designed to help you get the most out of life. How can you tell if someone is lying to you? What does your handshake say about you? Do you project confidence or fear? The nationally recognized body language expert Jan Hargrave has the answers. She's been a guest on the Learning Channel, Entertainment Television, Fox News, and written for major national newspapers. She's also the author of several books on body language, including Let Me See Your Body Talk. Jan Hargrave can teach you what you and others are saying with your body. Apparently, 55% of communication is nonverbal, and the body, unlike the mouth, does not lie. To enlighten us about body language, we welcome Jan Hargrave. Thank you so much for joining
I'm glad
us.
to be here. Thank you.
And I wanted to learn a little bit more about percentages, because I cannot believe that most communication is nonverbal. We don't expect that.
It is. 55% of our communication is nonverbal. 38% simply comes from someone's voice inflection, because when someone is excited, the voice goes a little bit higher. It's a big part of communication, and only 7% of actual face-to-face communication does come from the words that people say. So you remember the old saying, actions speak louder than words.
Absolutely.
We say an awful lot about ourselves by the way we carry our shoulders, by the way we shake hands with others. You know, when someone has a meeting with you, whether it's for a job interview or negotiation, I know they make a judgment of us the moment that we see them, because we judge them the moment that we see them.
Very good point. How'd you get into this?
Well, I was in graduate school in college. I'm from Louisiana, and I had a professor who was interested in it and was doing some research in it too. And one day, and this was kind of strange, but he walked in and he would just simply point at some of the students, some of us, and he'd say, "I know what you're thinking," or "I know what you're thinking," or "I know what you're thinking." And one day he pointed at me and he said, "Jan, I know what you're thinking." And I said, "How can that old fool know what I'm thinking? Because it always wasn't too pretty." So he told us about body language, and I said, "You mean I can observe how someone moves their hands, moves their body, and tell what's going on in their mind?" And he said, "Yes, you can." And I was amazed, because I wanted to learn about it at first just because I could figure out my friends.
Right.
Maybe a boyfriend or a
Right.
good friend. So I began this research, and it was minor research at first. But as my years in college went on, I did my master's thesis in this. I did my third degree's dissertation in this. So then after all, everything was body language. I would go to parks and take pictures of people sitting certain ways, come back with a team and say, this means this means this. So never thinking when I first researched it how valuable it would be in every part of our lives. I mean, for every at first it was just attorneys or criminal justice majors who were interested in body language. But nowadays, I think anyone who has to have a conversation with someone else, if they want to win and make it a win-win situation for them, I think understanding the correct body language to use can win things for you all the time.
Well, let's talk about that, because
Okay.
that's what's important, right? Let's start with the handshake.
Okay.
Show me a good handshake and a bad one.
I'll show you a good and a bad one. In nonverbal communication, insides of palms always signify acceptance. Because if I go to hug you, I mean, my palms will be facing up. It's saying, you know, I like you, I accept you. So when someone comes to shake your hand, there are different positions they can come to you with. And we'll try this together. Some people come to you straight up and down this way.
This is a correct one, right?
This is the correct one. Some people will do this to you, which means something totally different. The hand that is facing the ground is the one who wants to be more so in control.
So I want to be in control of you right now.
You want to be in control of me.
And if you were like this, you'd be controlling me.
I would be in control of you.
All right.
But whatever hand is facing upward, this is more submissiveness.
Okay.
So therefore, I would be giving you a message that says, whatever you decide, I'm perfectly okay with that. The appropriate handshake for business is the vertical, straight up and down, because it allows each person in the conversation an equal opportunity to talk. One thing that I noticed that you do with your finger, and this is kind of interesting, you tend to point a finger at me. When someone points a finger at someone else in the conversation, it usually means that they would like to have the final word.
Ooh, I definitely want to have the final word.
I just tell people, just nonchalantly bring that finger down. No, it's okay. I mean, most everybody, but some people will point as much as this.
Wow.
So if they point as much as this, it's like saying, I won't even have you talk with me because I want to understand everything that's going on.
Okay.
And so the correct thing that people can understand and remember is web has to touch web. So the web of my hand has to touch your hand, and then it allows us a good firm handshake.
Okay.
And I think most people know this, or maybe studied this, or their parents said to them, the kind of handshake you give someone else is very indicative of your level of self-esteem. When it's firm, it just says, I feel good about me. So in society, to get people to trust us and have confidence in us, we have to give them firm handshakes. And I say to people that if someone were to give you a weak one, so let's just try a weak one, that I would just do this, you can't. This is a big inferior. Cool. Correct. This is not cool at all. And you even can say to someone jokingly, I don't think we got a good handshake. Let's try that again, because you never want them to leave you thinking, this person doesn't even know how to shake hands with me. So you want to make sure, because every meeting has two wonderful opportunities for handshakes. An entrance handshake and an exit handshake. So if that first one was not to your liking, then perhaps during the meeting, you would think to yourself, you know what, I'm going to give them a good handshake when they leave me.
And you notice when kids shake your hand, they tend to do this because they don't have enough confidence.
Not yet. This originated, Patty, from this.
Right.
You know, it was a gentlemanly kind of characteristic. And so some men of old days, they still give that gentle handshake only because that's the way they were taught. But I think the generation coming up knows you have to give a firm handshake.
Let's share some of the gestures of defensiveness.
Defensiveness. Anytime something's in front of you, it's not fully letting you receive someone else's message. So if someone were in conversation with you and their body is like this is the toughest, the most negative, the most defensive cross that we have, because this is as though you have a shield in front of your body and you're saying, I want to think like I think, and I don't want to think like you think, so I'm putting something between the two of us. The only acceptable arm crossing that we allow and teach in college negotiating classes is when fingers are visible. This one is okay. This is called a resting position or a coach's position. I'm more comfortable with one hand. It can be the one hand showing or two. I don't want people to not cross their arms because it's too comfortable to cross. But if you have to cross in a serious meeting,
make sure you do it with your hands open.
I would always tell people, I'd rather not see you cross. I'd rather see you actively engaged in the conversation. Because look, when I'm talking with you and my hands come towards me, it's as though I want you to get into what I'm saying to you and fully believe in it. So anytime something's in front of you, and even a good suggestion would be this. If you were talking with someone else and they stay like this, it is wise that you would help them uncross by handing them a cup of coffee.
Give them a hug.
Give them a hug. And then, because if I have to uncross my arms, well, then I appear more open. It says in the research that the more relaxed and open the upper part of the body is, the more receptive that person's mind is to taking in your information.
Interesting. Now, I read that you said that people who use their left hands a lot tend to lie a lot. Tell me about that.
Well, it's not that they tend to lie, but I'll just tell you how hand motion works. Everything that I move on the right side of my body, that is operated from the left side of my head. My left brain is the analytical side, the numerical side, the factual side. My timetables are here. So if I'm trying to multiply something in my head and have trouble getting the numbers thought of, I would take my right hand. It would help me clarify that information, and then I would actually be able to speak. Any motion on the left side of our body, that is all controlled from the right side of our head. Our right brain, that's a fun side. This is the comical side. This is a side that daydreams. When we tell a lie or make up a story, it comes from this side of the head. So because it comes from this side of the head and someone's gesturing, more than likely when they tell you a lie, they're going to gesture in some form or fashion with the left hand.
Interesting.
And the gestures, you want me to just cover maybe a couple of the dishonesty gestures? Typically the lying gestures are gestures that even stem from childhood. The very first one is this. If someone's getting ready to tell you something and they're very nervous about it and don't know that they're not telling the truth, they're going to take their left index finger and as they tell you their lie, they quickly and nervously begin to rub up and down the left side of their nose. The liar usually does this. He goes up twice, he looks down, and then he comes down, out twice this way. The rubbing of the nose is a distraction to get you to look here and not look here. So when they're doing this, they're saying, like, I don't want you to believe fully everything that I'm telling you. And this motion originated when you were a child and you said something you were not supposed to say. You tried to stuff it back in. We're still trying to stuff it back in, but we're now more sophisticated and know better than to put the whole hand, in front of the mouth. When someone's trying to cover the mouth, they're probably trying to cover information. And one thing that's interesting to remember is this. Let's say you're not talking and you catch yourself doing the lying gesture while you're listening to someone else. If you're doing it while you're listening to someone else, it means that you feel you are being lied to. It is as though you're thinking, wow, this stuff stinks. I don't believe a word of it.
And this is subconscious, isn't it?
They're called manipulators. They're just done because the person's nervous and they know what they're telling you is not the full truth. So left-handed gestures that touch the nose, touch the eye, excessive eye touching while someone's talking with you is also associated with dishonesty. And this, too, is also associated with dishonesty. Remember the old person that cross the eyes, cross the ears, and cross the mouth. It's kind of the same gestures, and they're primarily done with the left hand because it's controlled from this side of the head. Because if someone's talking with you and they're doing this, there's no sense that someone does this while they're talking with you. They're doing this because they want you to look here, and they don't want you to look here. So if those are gestures of dishonesty, you want to just, I'll give you maybe an honesty one if you would like.
Yeah, no, what I was going to ask you, though, but also about dishonesty, what I notice about people who are saying something dishonest is also they don't look at you in the face.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point, because
they're looking somewhere else.
We, from courtroom work, know that when someone, but I think any human being would know that if someone never looks at you, you don't want to believe what they're telling you, because our moms always said, you look at me when I'm talking with you. I want to give you the percentages, though, of indirect and direct eye contact that's workable in a situation. If I'm sitting here talking with you, then 80% of the time, my eyes need to be focused on your eyes.
Yeah.
That's what business experts say. About 20% of the time, my eyes will move because my eyes have to search my big brain for my next thought. Because if I looked at you 100% of the time I was speaking with you, you would think I was crazy, correct?
Right.
So it's about 80% I'm looking, then I look away, and then I come back. So eyes that never meet yours are eyes that we don't trust. Eyes that blink excessively too much, that's also associated with dishonesty. And people who keep their eyes closed for longer than necessary while having a conversation with you. Ever talk with someone and the whole time they're talking with you, their eyes like this, you're like, what is this?
Open your eyes.
Right. It usually indicates that they're trying as much as they can to block out something they don't want you to know.
Don't want you to know.
So a lot of this, I mean, it's nervous tics, it's even licking of the lips. All these gestures have to do with dishonesty.
And you were going to go into the honesty gestures.
Dishonesty is primarily done with the left hand. Honesty is done with the right hand. And the most sincere gesture that we've ever researched is taking the right hand and actually bring it here when you're in conversation with someone.
Your heart, touching
your heart.
And I
know, that someone has seen this and said, maybe seen someone say, you know what, I had a great time with you, and they believed you. This is the most honest gesture we've ever researched in body language. Eye contact, of course, has to do with honesty. A lot of times when people are begging that someone believes them, their hands are this way too. Like a man might say,
well, he cheated on his wife.
Yeah, no, he'd say like, I've been here all night, baby. I'm telling you the truth. So sometimes when we're pleading to be believed, we do this.
Okay.
But it would be much wiser to maybe do this, or just talk and actually use hands. People are more interesting to watch if they're using their hands instead of just sitting here this way the whole time they're having a conversation with you.
Let's talk about listening. There are ways to listen or to show gestures that are good listening gestures.
You just did one. Yeah, that too. But you know what? A slight tilt of a head when someone's listening to someone else shows interest. You see, it's just a little tilt. When someone's not interested, the head is straight up and down, and so as though they're thinking, when is this thing going to be over? But in listening gestures, and this is interesting because people have always said that women are better listeners than men. Women are not better listeners than men. We appear to be better listeners because, what is it? Because what? We give nonverbal feedback. In a conversation, a lady does this. Sometimes a lady smiles. Men more so stay in a neutral position. You know, they just stand there and they're listening, but they're not giving you feedback. So when I work with men audiences, I say, sometimes you got to do this, and sometimes you got to smile. So let's say a lady would have a meeting with the man, and then she'd see someone else down the hallway, and they'd say, well, how did the meeting go? And she'd say, I don't know. I never got any feedback from him. So a listening position would be that you're there, you're ready to listen, you're leaning forward, and that you give back some kind of nonverbal, because the definition of the word communication comes from the Latin word a commonness of understanding. And there can only be a commonness of understanding if there are two parties involved. I mean, there has to be a sender and there has to be a receiver. So people have to understand that. And I know it's tough to be a good listener because our minds wander. So we have to always stand ourselves and say, I need to pay attention now. What did they exactly ask me? Let me answer the question they asked me at that moment.
Well, let's talk about something really important for most of us, which is job interviews, how we're supposed to conduct ourselves and what our body language should be like for a job interview.
Right. Well, I think the first thing to consider is the moment that you walk in there, that the handshake is done properly. And another thing to consider that, when we researched this years ago, we thought it was kind of comical. For a man to get seated in a desk and be ready to be interviewed, there's only about 11 motions that he does. He might have his ballpoint pen ready, he'll have his resume ready. A lady sometimes does too many motions to ready herself to be interviewed. She might have to dig in a purse for something. She might have so we have to come in there prepared. You know exactly where that ballpoint is. You know exactly where your resume is, that you don't have to thumb through pages.
Right.
You know exactly that you need to sit there and just give them the attention that you need. The biggest gesture of confidence is simply this. I know that you've seen someone do this. It's called a steeple in body language.
Okay.
And as we teach audiences, steepling is the largest gesture of confidence that I could ever teach a group of people. It doesn't have to be done with all the fingertips together. It can be done this way, and the hands are just lightly putting downward. So it's softer than that, Patty. It's just like
well,
really
no, I was just
soft.
thinking about, when you say namaste, which is supposed to be
Kind of the
honoring
same
somebody.
thing,
Does it have anything to do with this, with the
Well,
steeple?
I think that it does, because it's like this is the peace in me.
There you go.
And this
You
is
honor
what
the
we
peace,
teach people, that let's say you're in a situation and you're nervous and you want to calm yourself down and make yourself, like, I can handle this. You need to do one of the gestures of confidence, because if you do it enough, after a while, it's going to end up making you feel much better. Instead of standing in the wings doing this.
Right.
Look how nervous I would look doing this, and then continuing to do it would make me feel more nervous. So if I could just calmly sit there and do this. So you see, it's kind of obvious if I do it here, but a lot of times you see someone do it here. I can even see this is a steeple gesture.
Is this one right here? Or that's too
that's
close?
like too close.
Okay,
I would maybe do a little, point like this, this, just with one of the fingers. This is what also we know is that when you're speaking and you're confident with what you're saying, your steeple gesture is at chest level.
Okay.
When you're listening and you're confident with what you hear, usually your steeple gesture is a little bit lowered. So, like, if I would be listening to you and I would want to put into that conversation, and I would believe in what you're saying, then my hands would be here. If I want to control the conversation, look, the hands are a little bit raised up here.
Okay.
It's kind of an interesting, but it's real soft. And, I work with a lot of politicians, and they study body language, but sometimes they're disbelievable because they don't do their gesture at the appropriate time. They may say an entire sentence and then they'll think, oh, I better do the steeple gesture. You see, so that's how you catch people, is when they're disjointed, they're not telling you the truth, is that the gesture will not appear at the appropriate time.
What can you tell about some famous politicians like Obama or Mitt Romney or?
Oh, I did Bill Clinton's body language, and it is documented, though, when he testified, that he did the lying gesture once every 4 minutes. But as we look at Barack, and as we look at Mitt, and as you look at Mitt and all of the candidates that he is talking with now, he's the most presidential looking. And sometimes presidential looking can get someone elected. You know where that all started off with? Was with John Kennedy and Richard Nixon. That was the first time we had televised debates. So Richard Nixon said to John Kennedy, will you wear face makeup? And John Kennedy said, no, I won't. And John Kennedy ended up wearing face makeup. John was a lot taller than Richard Nixon was, but he was standing up a little bit higher on a box in the back. But the lighting was difficult. It was right on here. And he began to perspire Richard Nixon in the face. So he looked like he was really struggling.
Right.
And John Kennedy didn't look as though he was. So in people watching it, they said that John Kennedy won. But those people who did not have televisions yet and just listened to it on the radio, they said that Richard Nixon won. So you can see how appearance has a lot to do with if someone's success. So as you watch Mitt, or you watch, I did Michelle Bachmann's body language when she first got into this too, and you watch Ron Paul, the body language can sell you and make people have confidence in you.
Right. Let's share with me some of the male and female gestures of evaluation.
When a man is evaluating what's going on, men tend to rub the chin back and forth. Just rubbing this way, it's almost as if they're thinking how much of this stuff is true. It's a good gesture. It's about the only time I would allow someone to really touch the face while they're talking with us. Okay. And the face is not going into the hand, because the moment a face starts to drift in that hand, that is the moment that the person is becoming bored with what you're saying. So it has to be just a soft rub.
So if you're bored
way.
With someone and you want them to know, you
just pull the hand this way.
Okay.
When a lady evaluates, women have a tendency to point a finger up, and so a lady will just do this. It's a soft gesture, but again, the lady doesn't want to have the head drift into the hand or drop into the hand, because it is a sign of boredom. So ladies do this when they evaluate, plus the tilt of the head, whether the man's doing it or the lady is doing this way, the head always tilts the more interested they are in what you're saying.
Okay. What if a man puts hands behind his neck? I see that all the time.
You see that all the time?
Yeah, I do.
You know, it's a big gesture.
Right.
It is a big gesture of confidence, but it is too strong to do in a room just of two people. It is equivalent to a man having his feet up on the desk while he interviews
which is
you.
rude.
Yeah, so I would hate to be interviewed by someone who has his hands this way, his feet up on the desk. In a room of 100 guys, I don't care if someone does this to stretch, because this is reminiscent of a man in a reclining chair at home saying, "I am the king of the castle." See where it comes from? So in a business meeting of just two people, it's almost too strong to have someone do.
Now, should someone cross their legs when they're negotiating something? Like what you were telling me about, your legs have to be facing the person you're talking to.
For successful communication to happen and wanting to win someone over, we should always cross towards our negotiating partner, because if I was talking with you and I would cross away from you, we always point our feet where our minds want to go. So this is as though I'm giving you a message. I'm going to have this conversation with you, but,
but I
want to exit. I want to exit from here. But your question was, should someone cross during a negotiation? Yeah. You look more stable if you don't.
Okay.
And you're actually just talking with someone.
All right.
So if it was a serious meeting for me, I probably wouldn't cross. I would sit this way. Men have a tendency, some men now do the European refined cross. Some men still do this. This is a number 4 cross, which is a little bit crude, because in some countries, the sole, which is
especially Asian countries, you don't do that.
Right. It's an insult to whoever's watching it. But I think some of our men here in U.S. are maybe not trained and still do this crossing, which is a rough crossing. I would rather that if a man had to cross, he would cross this way. It's more refined that he would do it like that.
What are some anchoring gestures?
Anchoring is just a slight touching of the person to let them know that you're fully in conversation with them. And I'll try this again. We'll pretend we're shaking hands. And as we're talking, I'm going to just touch you here. Okay. This is called anchoring in body language. The only acceptable area that I can touch a person who I don't know well is between the wrist and the elbow. We can touch here. If I didn't know you well and I touched you on the shoulder, I would be invading your personal space. But if I touch you here, it gives a message that says, I am fully present in this conversation.
Right.
It just stops me for a second. I give you good eye contact, and I validate you as a person, because so many times have people not had your hand and then they dismissed your handshake. If you're holding on to them here, they will never let go of you until you are ready to be let go of.
Oh, interesting.
It's a soft thing. Men can get away with it. Women can get away with it. It's just a little gesture of anchoring.
Do you think, for example, in Latin culture, you tend to be okay with hugging or shaking hands? We touch more.
Correct.
Are there cultural differences in body language, what's rude and what isn't, and what is appropriate and what is not appropriate?
Correct. Every culture has their own hand motions. And sometimes in negotiating with someone of another culture, we don't realize that. And sometimes we do gestures that are really rude to them or insulting to them, like this. You know, in U.S., this is good. Thumb displays are signs of proudness, because you might see a guy sitting at a desk this way, but this is not a good gesture in other parts of the world. So someone who has to have meetings constantly with another culture needs to understand that culture's body language before they go in there and have a meeting with them.
Yeah, you better know what you're doing,
You
right?
better know what you're doing, yes.
What are some of the three most important things that you'd like people to remember about our conversation with regards to body language?
I want them to know how important it is in their success. And I want them to understand that people will make a first impression view of you the moment they see you. So why not, for that first impression, you be the best that you can be? Sitting up straight, standing up tall, giving them good eye contact, if you want something from them. If you don't care about them, it probably doesn't matter. But you know what? It's going to sell you. 55% is nonverbal, 38% is voice inflection, and only 7% does come from the words that people say. Your body speaks volumes to others. It dismisses people. It invites people in. So I don't think that anyone should check off nonverbal communication as not being important in their whole study of life.
It sounds like it's more important than verbal communication.
Almost.
How do you know you're living smart?
I know that I'm living smart. Well, you know what? I thought about that. I put positive thoughts in my head every day. And I always say to myself, I can do this. I can do it.
Thank you so much for joining us, and it's been a delight to learn all about this. It's really exciting. And thank you for joining us. To learn more about keys to body language, go to our website. There you'll find a complete resource list. You can also email us or call us with your comments at 713-743-8513.
For a transcript of this program, send $6.95 to the address on your screen. Please include the name of the guest.